The local plan is a statutory document that is assessed by an independent planning inspector and must be clearly evidence-based. The report sets out the legal requirements for the local plan at this stage and the guidance that affects decisions through the local plan process, which includes the government formula for the calculation of housing requirement. The local plan also should support the Council's corporate plan priorities, meeting the priority to promote inward investment and job creation. Together with the Council's newly adopted economic growth strategy, it should set the framework for achieving the Council's economic ambitions. Not only does it help to deliver the economic strategy, it also makes provision for new housing to meet local needs and to support the growth of the workforce and support the provision of key new infrastructure, or it should. But this local plan has always been forced to use housing numbers which are much higher than any serious economic estimates of job creation can match. That is the government formula. The local plan is not, therefore, a standalone document. It sits with other council documents to try to achieve the council's wider ambitions for the area: the economic growth strategy, the housing strategy, and the corporate plan in particular. The report also sets out the main issues raised during the Preferred Options consultation, January 2015, and provides recommended responses to those issues in Annex 2. The report addresses the updating of the evidence base for the local plan process and indicates key changes that are being proposed for consultation as revisions to the Preferred Option local plan. Those key changes set out in Annex 1 are the identification of additional sites to meet the increased housing required by government policy, sets out the Council's current position on the future of Manston Airport site when considered beside the evidence currently available, identification of key road schemes to be provided alongside development. More localised road schemes are being developed as the plan progresses. To invite proposals for sites to be considered as local green space within the local plan. It is very important that parish and town councils put forward proposals that may be emerging in their neighbourhood plans. Amended location for the proposed Thanet Parkway station following evidence from the Thanet Parkway Project Board. Proposals for adopting new national technical standards in relation to water efficiency, internal space standards, and accessible and adaptable accommodation. There are a number of key points. Firstly, it is important that there is no significant delay to the local plan process. A delay could result in intervention by the Department for Communities and Local Government, effectively removing council influence on the process. Councils have been told by this Conservative government that they must produce local plans for new homes in their area by 2017. Investment in the area could be further significantly undermined or delayed given this plan is already 6 years late. Members should also be aware of the bill at its second reading in Parliament that will allow the County Council to take over the local plan if it stalls. Members should also be aware that the London plan is now being reviewed and there are questions about how London will meet its own housing requirements. A summit is being held tomorrow to examine ways in which surrounding areas, including South East, can help them to achieve their requirements. It is therefore important that the Council has a well-advanced local plan as the London plan progresses. It is also important to note that the Council is legally bound to make decisions based on the available evidence and follows the government guidance. A draft plan that does not do so is likely to be found unsound at examination by a planning inspector. This is likely to lead to a significant delay in adopting a plan, which has been the experience of other councils in Kent who have had to make significant additional housing in their plans. Also, without an up-to-date local plan based on evidence, there is a risk to planning application decisions. The Council would not be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply and would therefore be at particular risk at appeal in relation to housing developments. This risk would not only be losing appeals or High Court challenges, but potentially also having significant costs awarded against the council, where decisions are made that do not reflect the available evidence. In relation to the housing sites proposed in the report, it is important to consider the alternatives. If the council were to choose not to allocate these sites, that housing would have to be found elsewhere in the district. For example, if it is decided following the production of further evidence that the airport site were not to be allocated for housing, against the available evidence, the council would need to find sites for another 2,500 dwellings. On the basis of previous work, this would probably be at the edges of the urban area in areas such as Westwood, Westgate and Birchington. This would involve the loss of about 70 hectares or just under 180 acres of greenfield agricultural land, which would be contrary to government guidance as the airport site contains a significant level of previously developed land. There is an error that I would like to point out in the Sustainability Appraisal Report. On page E14 of the main essay report, there is a reference to Dandelion Gateway in relation to archaeology and policy SP05. This is an error and the consultants have been asked to correct it. On the basis of legal advice, the report proposes a focused consultation on revisions to the draft plan published in January 2015, with accompanying consultation relating to sustainability appraisal, strategic environmental assessment and habitat regulations assessment, the draft infrastructure delivery plan and inviting proposals for local green space. The report also indicates that the changes to the local plan timetable should be reflected in the Council's local development scheme, the published work programme for the draft local plan. The Thanet Transport Strategy, jointly prepared by Kent County Council and Thanet District Council, which supports the draft local plan, will be the subject of a separate report and consultation following a decision on the draft local plan. Having said that, you will find that the majority of the proposed road routes are shown in the local plan revisions, Annex 1, bits 13, 14, and listed in the draft infrastructure delivery plan, Annex 8, page 12 to 14. Although we're not proposing to publish a whole draft local plan at this stage, work is still going on in relation to other important parts of the plan. We are continuing to work with other organisations on the infrastructure delivery plan to make sure new development is properly served by utilities and local facilities, ensuring the local plan reflects the new economic growth strategy, looking at whether the council can set up a programme where local people can receive training and employment as part of new construction work, making sure that all new housing and other development can be broadband ready at the highest standard, and ensuring that our environmental policies are appropriate to protect the best of the local environment. There are a number of areas of work continuing, and these will be reported back to members at a later date. The report recommends that Cabinet agree that the proposed revisions to the draft local plan and the accompanying sustainability appraisal, strategic environmental assessment, habitat regulations assessment reports go out to the public for consultation purposes for a period of 6 weeks, and agree the appropriate amendment to the local development scheme to be actioned. In view of the significant issues involved and the amount of documentation that there is to look at, I am proposing that the consultation period is extended to 8 weeks. We should also bear in mind that the draft plan is already available to the public for scrutiny and will continue to be until the consultation period officially starts, giving further time for it to be thoroughly considered. This report was considered by the Overview and Scrutiny panel on 21st of November. The panel agreed the following recommendations to Cabinet. Include specific recommendations in the consultation that underline the inclusion of potential aviation use as part of a mixed-use scenario. Should explicitly explain that evidence produced during the coming phases of consultation can still be considered between now and examination in public, and further reviews to be conducted to the rejected list to get extra space for housing development in order to minimise the use of green fields. In response to that, Draft Policy SP05 relating to the airport site requires design and heritage statements to include links to the site's heritage to support tourism in Thanet, including consideration of proposals that would permit a limited element of aviation use, subject to number of flights being below the threshold that would require a statutory licence. This does not preclude the application for a statutory licence. I can confirm that evidence produced during the coming phases of consultation can still be considered between now and the examination in public. There is also the opportunity for people to present evidence to the independent inspector at the examination in due course. And the sites have been assessed in relation to the brownfield land point, but a further review would be undertaken prior to submission of the draft plan to the inspectorate for examination. I therefore propose that the proposed revisions to the draft local plan and the accompanying sustainability appraisal and related appraisal documents go out to the public for consultation purposes for a period of 8 weeks, and agree the appropriate amendment to the local development scheme be actioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fairbrass. I will second that and reserve the right. Cabinet happy that we should extend the recommendation for a consultation period of 8 weeks rather than 6? Okay, thank you. We do have a number of councillors wishing to speak under 21. Can I just remind you all that if somebody ahead of you makes the point you're going to make, it would be nice for you to smile and nod and not repeat it in the interest of saving a bit of time. So, Councillor Bayford, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would just like to remind you, unless you've forgotten, that you were elected on a promise to reopen Manston Airport. You clearly went cold on that idea sometime last summer, and indeed the ink was barely dry on the Avia report when you announced the death of Manston Airport. And tonight I've no doubt that you will help to pass for consultation the latest draft of the local plan, which has no airport in it. I've been a member of the local plan cabinet advisory group whose thoughts and recommendations have informed the final local plan that's come to cabinet. And I've been on that since its inception, which was probably about 6 years ago. Its current form's probably been about the last 3 years. And I've got to say that throughout that time, the airport site was always designated for aviation purposes. There did, of course, have to be a recognition at some point that the airport might fail, and certainly when it was put up for sale, it was clear that there could be other uses needed on there. But it was recognised it was such a large and important site that its future warranted specific attention. And indeed, to that end, a couple of specific airport area action committees, or under various names, were set up. And they did spend some time looking at options, and indeed the options were many and varied. And for whatever reason, those little working parties didn't actually continue and sustain. And what really concerns me about where we are at the moment is that after very little discussion at the Cabinet Advisory Group, when the Avia report came out, the airport designation for Manston is gone. And in its place are proposed policies giving Stonehill Park exactly what they want: 2,500 houses on a mixed-use site. I want to make it clear publicly that I did not support this recommendation to Cabinet, although other members on there did. I obviously want an operating airport, but if that doesn't happen, then the site deserves much better than a slab of high-density housing and piecemeal commercial development. I'm also disappointed, Leader, in the zeal with which you personally are pursuing this agenda. You came to Scrutiny Committee uninvited to push acceptance of the draft local plan, even though your deputy was there, and she'd been actually very efficiently pushing the Cabinet Advisory Group along to its conclusions. So it's a bit of a surprise that she wasn't there to actually present on that night. She's presented very eloquently tonight, so why you were there, I'm not really sure. You've also made, in my opinion, a very baffling appointment to the Chair of Planning of a man with little or no experience of planning, whose main qualification seems to be that he's against the airport and regularly sings your praises in council. We now have the spectre of a debate on next week's planning agenda about a matter that's absolutely crucial to the future of the airport site, which is going to take place in secret. It's one thing if, after due process, Thanet doesn't get its airport back. It's quite another if it's lost as a result of systematic manipulation of events.
Okay. Councillor Game, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Manston Airport site has, as we now know, been included in this plan, and it's on the basis of apparently what is becoming more and more seen as a flawed viability report. UKIP are now proposing what can only be described as a new town. This goes completely against the wishes of those who voted for them on their much publicised agenda of bringing the airport back. In fact, UKIP are so aware of the intensity of feeling regarding the airport site, they have now excluded the press and public from the upcoming planning meeting when discussing the change of use. It takes me back to my previous comment about an open, honest and accountable manner.
It's a game. It's a game. What may or may not be happening in the planning for next week, that's the second speaker who made reference to it, is not truly relevant to local plan here today.
Okay.
It is about a different situation. The decision was taken some months ago, as you all well aware.
Okay.
So can we please move on?
Okay. I do, however, applaud the suggestion that 10% of all new development should be accessible and adaptable dwellings. I note the inclusion of a primary school on the Manston site. Wherever these houses are built, there will be a need for more primary school places. But I don't see a mention of secondary school places. Our current secondary schools are already oversubscribed. Lastly, I am confused by the thinking in the plan that by building more houses, crime and specifically burglary will be reduced. Surely there will just be more houses to burgle. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Partington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report talks about the impact on communities. I believe this plan will have a significant impact on communities. In Westgate alone, on sites ST1 and ST2, you are proposing 1,000 homes. With an approximate population of 7,000 in Westgate, it's hardly Westgate homes for Westgate people, unless there's going to be a massive baby boom. The most of these new residents won't be requiring homes until well after 2031. I don't believe the plan is sympathetic to the provisions of local needs. There is no doubt it far exceeds these requirements, and we shouldn't feel pressured to fulfil the needs of the London overspill. I would like to know where you get the figures for the notional delivery period, what is the breakdown based on, and where is the evidence to support this? I would like to know why it is deemed necessary to have a separate report and consultation for the Thanet transport strategy. Surely these two components should work together. Why are we even considering putting a local plan out to the public when the plan is incomplete, as mentioned by Councillor Fairbrass? Under the corporate overview, there is a concern that not having a well evidence-based local plan places the council at risk in terms of appeal decisions. And we know the current local plan is very out of date, and it seems to me the risk has come from the council itself when it seems in a rush to change the usage of site SP05, also known as Manston Airport. If this usage wasn't changed, the appellants wouldn't have a case with the Planning Inspectorate. And finally, I was just about to mention something that's already been mentioned, and I am pleased that we are going to extend, or the recommendation is to extend to 8 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fairbrass, please.
I'd just like to take some of those questions. I'd like to remind Councillor Bayford that we did twin track this from the beginning of the year, so you were aware it wasn't done over the last year. There was a twin tracked methodology in the local plan working group, and I don't believe that Councillor Wells has ever said that it's the death of Manston. Yes, we promised. Promised. Don't believe everything you read in the local paper. Goodness. Oh my goodness. Some of the questions that are being raised, I think, are better put into the consultation. KCC will be. They are doing a proper look at what schooling is needed in the area. And I don't know the answer to the notional delivery period, but I'm sure that Adrian will be able to sort that one out. Thank you.
I assume you're talking about the phasing shown in Appendix B. That comes from a number of sources. It's either from when applications have been made and the 5-year period that applies to that, or it will be information directly from the agents as to how they think delivery might take place, or it's based on assessments that we've done looking at the sites over a period of time. We monitor housing completions every year, so we've got quite a lot of experience of looking at that. It is only indicative though, the phasing in Appendix B, and no doubt we will get comments from developers and others about some of that phasing needing to be changed. So we'll see what we get back in the consultation, but that's what it's based on.
Thank you. Actually, I think Councillor again mentioned secondary schooling or whatever. Certainly I've been to meetings with Roger Goff and his team at KCC about the numbers of junior and primary schools planned, and they are more than well aware of the bulge that's currently in primary school moving forward into the secondary school arena. They have got some plans for dealing with that. They're not yet at a formulated stage, but the truth is that even if you take 2,500 houses as what's like to happen there, that's not big enough to support an entire secondary school, so it would have to go either with people travelling out to it or somewhere in between, and they are looking at potential sites for that. Councillor Stuart Piper, please.
Thank you, Chair. I react personally to the suggestion that your team are entirely ready to acquiesce. I thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak our minds freely, and for those who think there may be some acquiescence going on, at this moment in time I am disinclined to acquiesce. There are two local ports that could play a significant part in the long-term economic plan for Ramsgate, the airport and the seaport. I want to ask tonight why the haste and why the waste concerning the airport. In the coming months we have a public consultation and we have an inquiry by the Planning Inspectorate. Why the haste to hint to the Planning Inspector that we are happy to change the designation of our airport before he has to consider the question of change of use? Why the haste to give the public this single take it or leave it choice? What if we are forced to have a complete rethink about the allocation of housing? We would have to do this process all over again, and that speaks to the whole idea of unnecessary delay. Try as I might, I cannot see as detailed a plan B as plan A, should the airport be retained for aviation use, which is the current SAVE designation. 48 councillors and 2 MPs were elected to do everything we could to save the airport for future generations. Have we in fact passed the buck to the aviation industry when it was not their job, it was ours? River Oak are still around, and Eddie Chewell has returned to the fray. Opportunities like this do not come along every day, and we should make every effort to avail ourselves of this lucky break. I'm tempted to ask when we're going to fight a little harder with them instead of seeming to be against them. Why the haste then to throw away our children's future? I would ask members of the Cabinet to consider Luton Airport. If their council had closed the airport or refused expansion at the time, it would not now be the largest employer in the area. I have been asked by members of the public why this council does not issue a Section 22 on all planning applications for the site until a clear decision has been reached about the future aviation at Manston. Report after report says the country needs more airspace in the southeast, confirming that there is an existing national need for what we already have. Why the haste to throw it all away? The government has spent over £3 million on the airport site already to cover emergency needs in relation to Operation Stack. Why waste that £3 million? The country needs an OPSTAC facility, the economy demands it, and the planned site is nowhere near built yet. Why waste the one site that is available for such emergencies? The Ministry of Defence has formally objected to any building near the high-resolution directional finder, known as the HRDF, on the airport site. This is used to precisely locate transmissions from both military and civilian aircraft as part of the National Air Traffic Control functions. I understand that moving this important facility would incur huge costs nationally, and so would ask who is going to pay for that. And can we have an update, please, about the Ministry of Defence's concerns? What happens to the fire training school if houses are to be built next door? We don't even know if this land is safe for housing. So speaking to the evidential nature of this local plan, we have no evidence. Do members remember Paddock Wood? Children could not even play in their own gardens because of serious ongoing contamination issues years after those houses were built. Why the haste to commit to housing at Manston without a full environmental report? I urge this Cabinet to delay the recommending of this report for consultation until we are certain, among other things, that the national air traffic control needs are resolved. The land is proven to be environmentally safe, thus meeting the evidentiary criteria, and the government confirms that we do not need more airspace in the southeast. Then we can give the public a real consultation to evaluate, and not this draft, which, if you'll forgive me, I would like to say, unlike aircraft from Manston, should not be cleared for takeoff.
Okay. Mr. Fairperson?
To answer the first part, the Council is in constant contact with DCLG, but DCLG were actually in contact with the Council on Tuesday requesting information on the progress of the local plan. It is clear that the Council needs to make progress with this plan, and I think I've already outlined some of the issues that we're facing. Given that the proposed DCO is still at pre-application stage, it does not give a case for delaying the local plan. The pre-submission stage is another 6 months away, and if circumstances change substantially in relation to the DCO, we can respond to that in due course. And I'm now going to hand over to Avia to answer your questions about